Hey, what's up, everyone? I am your host, Sethee.
I am Stylist Rashi Bindra.
Elevated Grapes is a digital media hub that includes a talk show, event correspondence, and digital hosting for partner projects.
The talk show which you are listening to or watching, depending what you're doing, covers topics in fashion, business, and lifestyle.
We regularly have incredible guests that share their stories, their experiences, and tips on the above topics.
And when we don't, you get to hear how we talk to each other off air.
So subscribe to your favorite streaming site, YouTube, and Instagram for behind the scenes and additional visual content.
Let's jump right into the show. Welcome to Elevated Grapes.
This is the Elevated Grapes Podcast.
Elevated Grapes Podcast.
With your host, Sethee.
And
Stylist, Rashi Bindra.
It's time to get started.
Let's talk fashion, shall we?
A force within the beauty and fashion world, Fulvia Farolfi has established herself as a world-leading makeup artist and one of the most sought after. Originally trained in Milan, Fulvia has worked with legendary artists from Irving Penn, Helmut Newton, and Avedon, Bruce Weber, Peter Lindbergh, Patrick Demarchier, to fashion runways such as Tom Ford, Gucci, Marni, Balenciaga, and Alber Ebaz, Betsey Johnson, and Missoni, just to name a few.
She's currently the brand ambassador for Chanel Beauty US, a position she's held for over 11 years, and we're so honored to chat with Fulvia about her journey. Let's take a listen. So Fulvia, welcome to Elevated Grapes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure and our honor. We're both big fans of your work, and we'd love to hear your story, and especially for our listeners to gain more insight. So I want to start off by asking you, you were trained in Milan, landed in New York, and your career includes some of the biggest names in the fashion world. Help us describe your journey from Milan to New York and how you got your foot in the door.
I basically learned the business in Milan. I went to a makeup school. I didn't know how amazing my teacher was, actually. I was just recommended. It's a long story, but I saw a picture in Italian Vogue, and it was a close-up, and I realized that I wanted to do makeup for photographs. So I wrote to Italian Vogue, and I asked, where is the best makeup school? And they said, it's in Milan. And I went to see it with my father, and 6 months later I enrolled, and after a week I knew that was going to be my life. I never looked back. And then I worked as I taught. They asked me to teach after the first year. They asked me to teach corrective makeup, and then a few days a week. And then I started to freelance and build a portfolio. So when I came to New York after 4 years, I decided to give it a try, because the photographer that did that picture was Irving Penn.
Oh my God.
Other amazing photographers that I liked picture of were American, and Bruce Weber, etc. So I had all these dreams, and I said, let's give it a try. And I came along with my portfolio. I just, in August. And I had all the list of the agents and the photographer, basically that's all I had. I arrived with a portfolio, but not covers. I wasn't famous in Europe. I think I was talented. I mean, from the little things I gathered, the comments, my work received and stuff like this, but so I came on my own. And then I went to see 1 or 2 agencies. It was August. So some wanted to take me right away. But when you don't speak perfectly a language, you have a sense of, you kind of, an instinct. And I was like, right. No. And then another important agency at that time, Art and Commerce, said, come back in a month. During the show time, etc., etc. And then one day I was uptown after a month, and in September, something like this. And I had on my list, and I called the studio of Irving Penn. And with my naiveness, not knowing how anything works. And there was an assistant. He picked up the phone and he said, "Mr. Penn doesn't see portfolio. Doesn't work like this. Send a card and call back in 2 weeks." So I did that because at that time we had a card, basically with the photographs in the front, in the back, and the name, and one telephone number with a, at home where to reach you, and that's it. And after 2 weeks, I called back, and this time was the studio manager, who Scottish, and thank God we spoke like for 10 minutes. I said, "I don't really want to bother Mr. Penn. I just would like him to see my work." And because she said the same thing, "Mr. Penn doesn't see portfolio. It doesn't work like this. I'm so sorry." But then after 10 minutes, she said, "Okay, drop the book tonight, come back in the morning." And then when I came back in the morning, she opened the door and said, "Nice to meet you. Mr. Penn loves your work. He's in a room, in a meeting right now." And she sat me down and we talked. And she sent me to an appointment with Maggie Buckley, who was the casting director at Vogue at that time. And when I went to that appointment, Maggie picked up the phone and said, of Brian Bentry, who was the first agent in New York, the biggest, bigger than Art and Commerce then. And she said, "There is someone from Irving Penn Studio. I think you should see her." And that's how I got an agent.
That's amazing. That's such an incredible story.
Yeah, it's a combination of, naiveness, not knowing, and thank God it took me almost 3.5 years before I worked with Mr. Penn, because by then I worked with people from all over the world, meaning photographers, stylists, etc., etc., and my English, my studio lingo, because there is such a thing as a studio lingo, things that you have to understand, how to handle editors, how to handle, studio manners, way more complex than what was happening in Milan, and by then I was ready, and it was great, and we worked together 10, 15 times, and it was memorable every time.
What was it like when you got that phone call or when you were waiting to work with Mr. Penn? Like when you just what was the emotion and the feeling you had inside especially after 3.5 years?
It was amazing. It was like a circle total came through, because it was the reason why. And I worked with him at least 5 times before. We're talking of, I think, generation nowadays, they have no idea of what is working with this kind of personalities. So I worked with him 5 times. First, I had to prove him that I was good. Then I could approach and say, "Mr. Penn, you inspired my career." And I said a little bit and about the story and the picture. And he said, "You paid me back today with your work. You're welcome."
Wow.
That's such an incredible feeling. I mean, your smile right now, just thinking about it, is giving all the answers.
Absolutely.
And he's such a wonderful photographer. So
amazing.
That must have been such a milestone in your life to have been able to work with someone like him. Like, it's a dream to work with him.
I mean, for me, yes, it was. He would. I remember he would come and look, and for me, it's like being an actor on a stage. It's like, please, and one time he said, "Not too perfect, Michelangelo." And it was like, he was like that. It was fantastic. But in that studio, for example, there was no talking, no music, no not. It was like quiet and focus. Very different, for example, than Avedon or Hero or other photographer or Newton or any other. But you would sit behind and watch the way he arranged or ask the model to move an arm, and it would all like come in place as the composition, and the picture was there.
Wow.
And also amazing.
No, that's like a dream to work with someone like him, like definitely. So that's been such a huge turning point for you. And then you also worked with Helmut Newton, right? Like you also
Yeah.
did work with them. How was that experience? Because they're
Uh,
so different as like photographers,
Hugely so. I mean,
right?
my story with Newton, I worked with him maybe 6 or 7 times, something like this. But the first one, I mean, to explain the kind of, today there's, if somebody is a little rude or direct or something like this, they complain. Okay, but this was, for example, my story with Newton. It was the first time for Anna Dello Russo as well. It was Italian Vogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was her first time too. So the only thing I knew, for example, Newton hates to wait. Like he had a temper, and that we knew. But that's all. But he couldn't German as well. If we have to be there at 9, we have to be there at 9. So we meet at 7 o'clock with the model Kylie Bax for a Italian Vogue couture story, shot in the l'Accademia delle Belle Arti, of the beautiful arts, where
Wow.
where you study painting or sculpture, etc. And it's a beautiful building in Milan. But we meet at the Italian Vogue offices. We do the hair and makeup there. The hairdresser, so the story couture, the stylist Anna, says vaguely 1700, and I know Mr. Newton's pictures, but I'm there with the stylist, so I do a pale, she's a blonde Australian girl, pale, but not white, but pale, cheeks, lips, tainted, a vague idea of 1700. The hairdresser who has worked with Helmut Newton for 20 years doesn't say anything and does her hair and stuff like this. And then we move in a van and we arrive at 9 o'clock on the dot in front of the academy. So Kylie is the first that gets out of the van, and she pulls outdoor, and Mr. Newton goes, "Who did you make up?" And me from the back, I go, "Me, go wash your face."
Oh my god.
Yeah. And then after 20 minutes, as I'm washing the face, moisturizing again and all that, Mr. Newton comes over and said, "Fulvia, I'm really sorry that I guess there was a misunderstanding, but I didn't, but I like my women, with the smoky eyes and the red lips." And I said, "No problem." I said, and we continue, and that's it. And it was beautiful 2 days. And then, and after that, I worked with him after, a few times here in US, and it was amazing. But it, what he had, so the editor, I was in the middle, and that happens very often. Yes, it was kind of hilarious if you look back on it, but he came back and apologized. He understood that I followed orders because I didn't know, wasn't there. This was our life then. It was like a total different, we work with big personalities.
Absolutely.
Same for the editors, and I learned tons.
So we're gonna take a quick break right there. We're talking with Fulvia, world-renowned makeup artist. She's sharing some of her fun experiences working with different personalities and photographers. But now we're gonna talk about editors when we come back and what it was like to work with various different editors. So we'll take a quick break. This is Elevated Grapes, and we'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's your host Sethee. Don't forget that you can catch us every Saturday on Rukus Avenue Radio and the dashradio.com app at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live newest episodes of Elevated Grapes. We'll see you then. Cheers.
Okay, well, everybody, welcome back. We're having a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I'm actually getting goosebumps like right here as I'm just hearing these amazing stories. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name because I'm not really good at it, but I'm going to try again. So we are chatting with Fulvia.
Perfect.
Thank you. And so we were chatting about your experiences with all these amazing photographers. Now, how was it like to work with such amazing, editors and stylists like Paulian Mellon? Like, she's made a huge mark in the industry, and also like Grace Toddington, who's one of my own personal stylists who I love.
Yeah.
But to work with people like that and their artistic vision, who are both so different, how is that for you?
Um, but for example, what I loved at that time, I don't even remember references. There were no references. You would just, or maybe if there were, it was prior to the day we came into studio. It was just, you would see the clothes, you would see the settings, the hairdresser, we would have a conversation at the beginning and about the look, and then and then start. And the first major person I met was probably Phyllis Posnick,
Mm-hmm.
and who worked with Mr. Penn many years, and then amazing. And I think in this case in particular, they worked on preparing for a picture for at least a month before we arrived in studio.
Wow.
And with drawings and etc., etc., etc. And certain photographers still work like this. Like Annie Libos, for example, will make sure you have a setup before the subject goes in front of the lens. So she does it with assistants, etc., etc. So, but there is a composition already. Try the light, etc., etc. And so I think that there is a conversation with the stylist prior, etc. But the beautiful thing is, like, you were not asked, shown a photograph and say, do this. I was like, which for me is like, oh God. It's such a killer, a joy killer. Even though I understand why it is done, and we can get to this later. Who else? Paulian Mellon. I mean, amazing. Exciting. I met her during the Allure years. She was a Vogue, of course, before that. And what a temperament. And
I feel like that's a normal in the industry. Everybody you're mentioning has some sort of temperament or
well, yeah. I mean, but, nowadays I see things like people like taking snapshots behind the photographer, stuff like this. They would have kicked you
oh my
out of the
goodness.
suit like in a flash.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, these people, also the team were like 6 people, 7 people, 8 people. I mean, it's like, it was a different, way more intimate, but certain studio manners, like at that time there were no monitors, but you don't go in front of the stylist, in between, or sit behind the photographer in the eye line of the model. I mean, these are such basic things that people just have no clue, and they haven't been taught nowadays. But and so Polly was amazing in the sense that she was hyper super dramatic, and I mean, to the point that when she would see a beautiful picture happening, she would cry, literally cry. And at times I would do things like if she was near me with it. I remember in Paris with the beautiful heavy makeup, beautiful story for Allure and heavy eye and metallic and etc. And I would, I'm a right-handed, but I did with my left hand something, and she was like, "Do you know what she did? Did you see what she did?" Because she noticed I was using my left hand to blend and stuff like this. And but just because I adored how passionate she was, and I'm equally passionate, but I'm not as I don't I don't express it as
In
much
the same
as
way.
yeah, in the same way. And who else? Grace, amazing. I mean, what a level of taste. Taste, and you understand so much, like sense of proportion, elegance. For Grace, everything is a story. It's like a movie. And she would always say to the photographer, "Are you sure you have the shoes? Are the shoe in?" Because she would draw. There might be a close up here and there during the story, but the full length, it was
Like I've read that about her. She likes the full length, and she tries to like get her cats in the shoots as well, because she like loved all her cats so much.
Yeah, But
She's amazing.
she will let, you know, yeah, very joyful also in the, and lighthearted, and in the way she lets a photographer try things and open, to certain, to try something, etc. I did many trips with her, Arthur Elgort, amazing photographer as well. So yeah, no, we had a great time. Amazing taste. Yeah, that's what you learn and think from each and every one of
Yeah.
them. Mm, well, so many other. Carlin Surf, another dynamic and wild character. So many. Camilla Nickerson, all fantastic. Mm.
So all some fantastic names. I mean, your name as a brand in that industry is no less than any of these people you're speaking about. So, you've come a long way building your brand. So we obviously we want to show that respect and also
Mm-hmm.
give you your credit where it's deserved. But that doesn't come
So
easily.
they,
Building that takes a lot
no,
of work and takes a lot of like you said, you got to prove yourself in the beginning and even as you go on, because I mean sometimes you're only as good as your last piece of work sometimes, right? So
yeah.
talk to us about some of the challenges you faced in the industry in becoming the brand and the name that you are for the world, the beauty and fashion world.
Some of the challenges for me, one of the things, okay, there's like being Italian is a very, you know, um, it's very odd. For example, in Milan, they would they they're called esterofili. They love people that come from abroad. They have a different vision and stuff like this. So I faced that kind of challenge where they would rather hire somebody that is from abroad. Now that I lived in US for 30 years is a different story for me. But at the beginning, this is the kind of challenge. Being here, or I worked a lot with Nick Knight, another amazing photographer. Not being English, there's a lot of English people tend to work a lot together. So, and I've always been kind of out of the, um, mm, you know,
Outside
um,
the bubble.
yeah, outside the bubble. Not. You cannot really. What has kept me going, I think, is the quality of the work and the fact that, let's say, if you hire me for a beauty campaign, the retouch that I require is very. I save a lot of money to photography in retouch because I learn without computers,
Mm.
and the fact I think I don't know. I worked 5 years in Shiseido, years in Paris, L'Oreal, for Armani, for Emporio Armani, and then Chanel. So a cosmopolitan thing where I kind of understand by now all the whole picture and who I
Hmm.
work for, and
Hmm.
so there. Yes, I might, you know. Um, I'm different, for example, than somebody amazing like Pat McGrath who built an industry. I'm more like of an artisan compared to people like this. But at the same time, I gave a certain certainty to the people that hire me because
Hmm.
I will make sure that the shoots will get done and there is no compromise on the results.
Sorry, I laugh because there's so many different ways I wanted to take the conversation with those questions. Sorry, with your points you're making there. At what point did that switch for you where it was no longer you having to prove because of, the ethnic background or the work, or people were following your lead, more so you trying to prove that it's got to be your way, like what you're suggesting is the right way to do it.
It never stops. You always have
Mm.
to, I think that part never stops. Also, yeah. Um, it never stops because again I can't make myself um, I am who I am, and I love who
No,
I
of
am.
course.
Also, the part, the aging, and finding yourself working with 16, 17, 18-year-old girls. It's a relationship that totally changes and goes from being a friend, when I started, to being a mom, more or less now.
Mm.
And it's something that, yeah, it was weird for the first few years, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And then it became, being totally, I'm an asset. If you understand, understand the situation. I'm kind of an asset to a photographer in many things without pretending to be the art director, without no. But because of the experience that I accumulated, that's how, that's why I think I'm still working well because of this. And also the other thing is the versatility, which is not like certain people are known for a certain style.
Yes.
For me, I get bored very easily. I can't do heavy every day. When I worked for 3 years almost with Ellen von Howard. We had plenty of fun. It was a lot of lashes, things, and fantastic. But then I need to change. And then I work with Nick Nine and I did other things. So, and my makeup can really go from natural to, very painterly, or like I did with Inez and Vinoodh, amazing photographer as well, for French Vogue recently for a couture story. And that's something that is not easy to sell, even for an agent. Even though I think most people know me for making women always look beautiful, and they will never be tacky. That's one thing I can't do. But the versatility is something, if you think about it, like photography-wise, like Maisel or Martin Marcus or people like this, they were versatile, and not that they don't do one thing only, like studio, but like, but I think it has helped me last in the industry.
Fair enough. We're chatting with Fulvia on Elevated Grapes, world-renowned makeup artist, hearing some great stories about the editor, the stylist, the photographer, the experiences, the ups and downs of working in this industry and growing her brand. We're going to take a quick break and come back to more stories and more insight from our world-renowned makeup artist, Fulvia. This is Elevated Grapes.
Hey everyone, this is Stylist Rashi Bindra. Do not forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, all your streaming sites, YouTube. We are also on Facebook. Just type in Elevated Grapes and you can find us.
So one of the most important questions I wanted to ask you, and from your expertise as a makeup artist, in today's generation and world, for some reason, makeup artists now have this pressure to be makeup and hair artists. Like they want to be both, and people just want to hire the one person who can do both of them at the same time. I have my personal opinion on that, but I want to hear what your take is on that whole thing.
I think this is a necessity that came out of budget reasons. And so hiring one person is less expensive, et cetera, et cetera. That's why, but if I think back, and who has been great in both hair and makeup, in doing both at the same time, it's probably maybe two people in 30 years that I can name that were good. Because they're two very complicated, two very different set of skills.
Yes.
And so, to me, I don't like to do something halfway well, and that I would rather do something fantastic and 100% perfect, rather than do halfway compromising. But I think it's a budget situation, especially for trips, especially for, but is it different to me? They're two different worlds.
Yeah, same here. I hope we can go back to keeping the hair artist as hair artists, because the way they can do hair and the way they understand it, I sometimes feel that that's just so special. And then, like you said, like how a makeup artist can see the face and just make something so beautiful is again, very different, and has that own vision and that own eye to do so. So I hope that does go back to being two separate, beautiful arts as well.
Yes, in certain, again, I think that would never happen like in all of our magazine, Vogue or V or things, but in smaller jobs, yes, it will be required, and it has been a way of survival, I guess, for artists, and why not? But I think we should never lower our standards.
I agree there.
Right?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on being a powerhouse in the industry. A lot of women feel that the need to sacrifice their personal lives to have a professional career in this industry, both fashion and or beauty. You always hear we can't have kids and family, and you want to travel and work and do international clients and work with major brands and magazines and so on and so forth. What's your point of view on that?
Um, I think there has to, I have a 20-year-old daughter, and at that time, for
So
example,
bottom
I
line, it
used
can be done.
it can be done.
It can
It
be
can
done.
be done. I did change things in my life in order to, make sure I was there enough. For example, I stopped doing fashion shows,
Hmm.
and I used to do seven, more or less seven for each Paris, Milan, and New York. But at that time, I stopped because luckily I started to work with a photographer who was based in New York and worked a lot of beauty, and worked a lot in studio. He also had young kids, and for more or less 10 years, we worked a lot together. This is Raymond Meyer, an amazing Swiss photographer, and and so that helped. And it was my choice.
Hmm.
If you have, it really depends who's your partner and what, but for me it totally made sense. I didn't want to be away um, all the time. And already I traveled extensively, extensively throughout. Um, mm, yeah, it can be done. You just have to make choices, and hopefully an understanding partner.
Yeah, that's so key. I find, and I think that is something, and I I reinstate this statement to all the women who are listening to this, especially ladies. There's no rules saying we can't have it all. We can have these international careers and travel. It's again the choices that we make and the
Yeah,
partners that we have. And guys, if you're listening, support your women on this. Trust me, you'll
yeah,
both have amazing, fulfilling lives. Like when two people are happy here. So it's
yeah,
done. There's choices to make, adjustments to make, but that's in any relationship.
yeah.
But yeah, sorry, that's my like 2 cents of like women empowerment there.
Absolutely. No, it's possible.
But,
It's
but I
possible.
think the important point you made there was more to do with the right choices with the type of work you want to do. I mean, you can't necessarily be everything for everybody and be in every situation. Like you had to choose not to do fashion shows so you can balance out your career and
Mhm.
personal life. So I think understanding what's important to you and what areas you want to be known for and focus
Hmm.
on is really important versus trying to do and be everything at the same time. Because I think that's where some of the downfall is as well. Like, you're trying to be everything within that the world that you're in, but then like, the other point you made, you're not going to be the best in one thing. For example, if your hair and or makeup, like, I mean, you choose one and you be good at it. And even within the makeup, you're choosing, I can do the fashion shows, but then I'm going to sacrifice family. Whereas I know I like to do the other work and I can be very good at that and also balance both. So I think that's a really important point that you made with respect to balancing out and choosing what you want to do in the industry. My
Yeah.
question to that point is, especially someone who's earlier on in their career, who's trying to build a name and a brand and balance their personal lifestyle, could they be potentially missing out on opportunities where, that one job or that one gig could blow up their name? But if they don't do it, they're missing out.
It's freelance lifestyle. It's every day. It's the, it's the choice, and the stress that comes with it. At the same time, I would never exchange it with a 9 to 5 job. It's a very, but we are every day we're faced with a choice whether, we jump on a plane and leave, whatever we have behind, and all of it. And um, there's different philosophies. There's depending, I think, on the agent you have, and that's but um, I I try. I think I learn from every job I say yes to, even if it's to learn that I will never see this photographer again because it wasn't either inspiring or
Mhm.
whatever, or rude to his assistants or something like that. So what I mean. It's like it. I will. So I tend to say yes more than no's.
Mhm.
No, because there's also working with young people, because I always want to be surprised by a new talent. So I always want to
Right.
keep my eyes open. and and you know, and give, and you know, participate in something new, and you know, that's it. That's more or less.
So one of the things you were mentioning earlier was, photographers that you worked with in the past, that they had a specific way of working, and they had a specific style of working.
Mhm.
If you were in a current environment where people are behind them taking pictures with their phones, and doing their own little Instagram videos and stories and so on and so forth, that wouldn't have flown back in the day. So
Mm.
talk to us about some of the other changes that you've seen with the impact of social media, and the current age and the current way of doing things versus when you started and when you built your career.
Social media is yeah, has definitely, mm, and I didn't understand the impact, you know, when it first started. But
Right.
um, for example, I was in a set with I'm talking about when Instagram first started, about 8 years ago, something. Not first started, but first became like a huge thing. And it was a multiple. We had like 8 or 10 models, and therefore there was 3 makeup artists. And I would see the makeup right of this other person on the girls, and then I would see the post, and I was like, but what filter did you use? I DM and I said, but it's amazing, but what filter did you use? And so, oh no, I didn't use any filter. And then 30 minutes later, you know, another text came in, and it's like, yeah, but I do send it to my retoucher, you know, and then they send it right away. So, and this person by now has millions of followers, for example. It's
Right.
the polar opposite of what I do. I show what's been done and what's it. You know, if I go through sometimes, like when I look for assistance, uh, I'll look at the print, but then I want to see a video. You know, if because the video doesn't lie, there's no retouching there.
Yes.
So nowadays it's like it's, and can I blame the person who's sending the picture, the photograph to be retouched? No, he did it. You know, he understood how social media work,
Hmm.
and is he selling a lie? Yes, but will he be a millionaire? Yes. So I can't blame him. You know, it's a total different way of working. And this is, I guess, understanding the social media and embracing it.
Hmm.
Something that I'm not as good at. Absolutely not. And I don't pretend to be. It really is more from my heart. It's a very,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I put, you know, um, my work, but sometimes I put something else. You know, you can see from my Instagram that it's not like
Yeah,
geared
it's
toward I don't know, at the moment, not geared towards building a brand, like a
mhm.
cosmetic brand or stuff like this. Is more from my heart.
Yeah, it's very personal, but it also shows your work. It has a nice balance to it, and you really feel like you are, like, we can get to know you from your Instagram. It's not your portfolio that's on your Instagram. It's literally your personality, which is such a huge difference in how a lot of people use Instagram today. So that's one thing I definitely noticed.
Thank you. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's
It's
okay.
a good thing.
At the
It's a
moment, it
good
works.
thing.
It's fine. And I would see. I would have to hire somebody if I had to do something, you know, very, you know, totally different. And um, mm, but yeah, the amount of retouch revolts. It makes me sometimes, because I see it.
Yeah.
The thing is, 90% of the people don't, and that's what. mm, yeah, and that's the sad point there.
So we're
But
chatting with world-renowned makeup artist Fulvia on Elevated Grapes. We're gonna take a quick break and come back and chat some more.
Hey guys, it's your host Sethee. Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to our Instagram channel at Elevated Grapes. Now back to our show. Cheers.
So we're sitting down with Fulvia, world-renowned makeup artist. We've said that over and over, but there's no other way to describe it, and the credit is well deserved. So we'll continue to make sure that that message is delivered. We talked about the difference between working in the industry before, back in the day versus now with the impact of social media. We also want to understand your take on, because you've sort of been involved in both worlds, in digital versus print. Digital is such a huge part of the industry right now. Print is still there, but I mean, digital
Yeah.
has a massive impact. So, what's your take on digital versus print? from before and after to now?
I think digital and the fact that every member of the team can kind of sit in front of the monitor and at times give an opinion without being asked, has kind of totally changed. Where before was more like, okay, the photographer would do a Polaroid and then try to recreate the Polaroid if the team liked the Polaroid, etc., etc. It was a way more, you had an element of surprise, which you don't have anymore. I think certain photographers were quicker to learn, for example, how to, like Raymond Meyer is a great example of how will a digital print in a magazine. I mean, like incredible skills there. So technically, I think his picture had looked much better earlier on than other photographer. And by now, I think his print is coming back, here and there, but more like Bruce Weber, for example. Bruce Weber still shoots print, which we love. And so there is an element of surprise that to me is always beautiful. Digital, it's interesting because you get to, of course, have the result right away. The thing is now everybody is like this, stares at the monitor. Before it was from different angles, you would look, and sometimes today the model sits there and wait for the photographer or the team to look at the picture, whether she's in bathing suits or in a coat, sweating or everything. And it's like, this is where I keep my mouth shut, and I like, because eventually each person has to work his own way. And but often I go to the girl and keep her company. Meanwhile, she waits. You know what I mean? It's different. And then the key is to adapt.
Yeah, no, that's very important. Like the whole, and I've heard this from like a lot of people as well. Like the way things were done before social media, especially as an artist, has changed so much now that we have the social media world. And like you said, it is about adapting and understanding this is the new way of doing things for a while, and then who knows what's going to happen in the future and how things would go. But I don't think we lose the the art aspect of it. I think that's always there.
Yeah,
Well, also, you raised another really important point, and I didn't think about it from that perspective, is the caught up on the monitor during the gig or during the job, right? I mean, you have maybe a team of people working there, and the two people are staring at the digital version of the photo, pre-touch-ups or whatever the case, while the model, for example, is maybe not be in the most comfortable position or climate for the outfit she's wearing, and she's got to sit there and wait. I never thought about that, but that must be a big issue during shoots on the regular, depending on the environment that you're in.
Yes. And then again, it depends who is the model. Like, for example,
Right.
with the, Linda Evangelista, she wouldn't let it fly for, more than 5 minutes. That would be, hey, excuse me, I'm here. And, meanwhile, a young girl, she wouldn't know, she would, because she hasn't seen what was before, But I think, especially, like I shot recently with Isabella Rossellini, and who is amazing, and the picture, by the way, came out wonderful. So no regrets. But we were both laughing at how things have changed in this sense, because you're left alone. At least
Yes.
10 minutes while they go through editing, which they could do later, but they don't.
Yes.
But you find is it worth arguing? No, they have to go through the way they create. That's the way they create. So it's just different.
So on the working side, I can see the challenges there, but on the end product side, talk to us a little bit about that. Because I mean, you talked a little bit earlier about filters and those being so readily accessible. I mean, a lot of times now people are taking pictures on their phone, and when they filter it out, it looks what maybe would have been a professional picture back in the day. So talk to us about the impact on the work. Like you said even before, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Some makeup artists, you want to see the video of what their actual work is like versus the filtered impact of their work.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about what your thoughts are in general on the impact of filters and digital print, digital work versus print back in the day.
You mean right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself, but to me, it's a little like cheating. Like you see sometimes, like Instagram, let's say I have to hire an assistant, and I see, you see pages and pages of these eyes or mega, close-ups, and you see the amount of retouch, but and there's just no way that a face will look like that, and therefore I can't. I have to see a video form of it in order, to hire this assistant. Or even when it comes, not so recently, we're doing a shoot for Chanel in a few weeks, and the casting, and when choosing models, I see immediately what's being retouched and what and I look for the picture where there is no retouch in order to understand what I will have in front of my hands when I start working.
Right.
And so I think the other thing also, somehow my career went towards photography that retouch very little. Inez and Vinoodh is one of them. Raymond's one of them. A certain, and on and on. Annie as well. It's somehow it went like this, unlike other photographers who are great on their own, but they use the when you see it, to me, is wrong.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
When
No, I
it
totally
looks
see
like
that.
fake.
Yeah, I know you're right. You're right.
No, you're absolutely right. There's that whole fakeness element to it, which has been a debate, since social media has started.
Absolutely.
A lot of artists do debate that, because we're not seeing the real person, we're not seeing the real photo. We're really seeing like a retouched, unrealistic expectation of this model, this face, or this person, or this art even, right? It gets so, it's not what you want in front of you sometimes. And it does messes things up.
Especially if you're working with the model for the first time, like you want to understand their features, what their face looks like, as a makeup artist, so you know how to approach what you're going to do with them. And if you're always looking, if your research is leading to filtered pictures, it's never going to give you a true depiction of what that person looks like and how to work with the face and the stuff you have to work with for their face, because every person is obviously different.
Yeah. And also, to me, is important, and this is for the new makeup artist, I was taught, for example, that the first thing you do, you go behind the person and have her stare at a mirror. There you understand the proportions of the face.
Interesting.
And what you have to do to make that face look at its best.
Right.
So if it's a square face, you reduce it to an oval with the shading. If the eyes are too close, you set them apart. If they are too far, you set them up close. If it's too round, you give a certain kind of shading, etc., etc., etc. Which by now I can do in 2 seconds. Just
Right.
But I never, like, somebody, okay, let's talk about reference. Somebody say, okay, let's do an eyeliner. This person's eye might not fit an eyeliner. I mean, it's a very simple thing. I mean, but to understand which eye it's good with an eyeliner and which eye is not, it's an eye. You need the eye for proportions. As much as a photographer needs to understand when the light is good and the light is not good.
Right.
Like one time I worked with Hero, amazing photographer. And he said to his assistant, one thing I cannot teach you is when the light is good. And this is a simple, I can't, for example, one thing I can teach one of my assistants is the sense of proportions. You either have it or you don't have it, or the touch. That's the other thing, the touch. Many of my girls fall asleep while I work, but I can't be rough. I put myself in their shoes. I would punch somebody if it was rough with me. So I'm like, it totally, not punch, but I wouldn't be happy, let's say, to be slapped around while you put makeup on. No, it has, and so I put myself in their shoes and I work in a certain way. And, but the sense of proportion is major to make somebody look beautiful.
That's so true. And it's amazing, all these tips that you've been giving already to all these to all the makeup artists who either even if you're in the industry or if you're just starting out, I do feel these tips are very valuable. Like even some things, even I'm like, oh wow, that's actually really, like I've never even heard of that. That's really very interesting. Are there any closing pieces of advice or tips you want to share before we wrap up?
Stay humble.
That
Don't
is
think
true.
about the money, and do it for love.
I love
But
that.
that's very clear in your work. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like your Instagram is about the passion for it. You're not there to, you're not using Instagram to build your brand. You're doing it because this is what you love to do, and it comes across as you're speaking as well. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really genuine message coming from someone in your position.
Thank you.
So, folks, we've been chatting with Fulvia, world-renowned makeup artist. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. For our listeners, to share your story, to share your experiences, to share the ups and downs, and what it takes to actually make it as a strong force in the
Fashion, yeah,
industry.
like
Yeah,
as a strong fashion and beauty makeup artist, and to work with such amazing legends, like
absolutely.
it's just been wonderful to hear your experiences.
It's been a pleasure for me chat with you both.
Thank you so much. Once again, you listen to
Thank you.
Elevated Grapes, and we will see you next week.
Hey guys, thank you for watching that podcast or that video. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of us and see some of our behind the scenes stuff, subscribe below.
Yes, hit that little red button thingy that's over there and hit subscribe and keep following us for a lot more cool fun stuff.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Hey, what's up, everyone? I am your host, Sethee.
I am Stylist Rashi Bindra.
Elevated Grapes is a digital media hub that includes a talk show, event correspondence, and digital hosting for partner projects.
The talk show which you are listening to or watching, depending what you're doing, covers topics in fashion, business, and lifestyle.
We regularly have incredible guests that share their stories, their experiences, and tips on the above topics.
And when we don't, you get to hear how we talk to each other off air.
So subscribe to your favorite streaming site, YouTube, and Instagram for behind the scenes and additional visual content.
Let's jump right into the show. Welcome to Elevated Grapes.